So, in the course of just looking up things that are interesting, I came across this CIA report about Soviet research into how to control human behavior through a lot of different methods, including psychological warfare techniques and sort of subtle physiological shit like electromagnetic influences and use of color or odor, or weird things. All the sort of shit you would be concerned about if you had a tinfoil hat on, like most people should at this point. But you could also look at a lot of this and see where it was probably used in events in your living memory, because this is a CIA report on Soviet research. But just like in Operation Paperclip with the Germans after World War II, the U.S. government, or the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, just takes all this information and they just incorporate it and use it to build their own research on top of. So this stuff that you see in here isn't just contained to the Soviet Union. This is something that the CIA found really interesting and wanted to work on themselves. So, anyways, I read through a bit of this, and it'll probably take a while for me to go through all of it. So I'll do it in some chunks. But I tried to find some of the more interesting sections here um, to talk about and to read to you, because not everybody has time to go look stuff up like this. All right. So I'll start here with some of the background, and I'll just read from it and give some commentary, I guess, when it's necessary, or add something. All right. To start with, this is the beginning of it. Part one. They're giving a background on what kind of research is being done here in the Soviet Union on on controlling people and um, imposing a totalitarian 1984 slash Brave New world government. All right. Background. Section one. Methods for manipulating or influencing the human mind exist and are being thoroughly researched by members of the Soviet scientific community. For background and introductory information, it would be best if some of these methods were briefly mentioned. Techniques studied by the Soviets include biochemicals, sound, light, colors, odor, sensory deprivation, sleep, electronic and magnetic fields, hypnosis, autosuggestion, and paranormal phenomena like psychokinesis, extrasensory perception, astral projection, dream state clairvoyance, and precognition. Paranormal phenomena have caused great excitement in recent years in the Soviet Union, so much so that it has been reported that Soviets had 20 or more centers in 1967 for the study of this area. It was also reported that annual budgets for 1967 paranormal research was approximately 20 million. I don't know what that is in today's dollars, but sounds pretty expensive. I'd guess it's at the very least hundreds of millions, probably in the $1 billion range. And this was before, it just made the dollar printing press go brr. All right, two, the purpose of mind altering techniques is to create one or more of several different possible states in the conscious or unconscious area of the brain. The ultimate goal of controlled offensive behavior might well be total submission of one's will to an outside force. It is more realistic to assume that lesser degrees of mental aberration would be the purpose of Soviet research in this field. Some areas of human manipulation that apply to this report are morale lowering, confusion, anxiety, disruption of social cohesion, or complete incapacitation. Since the desired end product of this type of research is some change in the human mind, only the non lethal aspects are discussed in this report. It should be remembered, however, that some techniques have lethal thresholds. And they talk a little bit about that, including how they can take sleep deprivation to the point of death, which suggests that they've tried that. So if they know what that threshold is, right? So that's interesting. But either way, what they're saying is that they just want to study ways to control your mind, which isn't surprising. But getting into the into the weeds of it, I guess, is kind of interesting. All right. The purpose of this study is to portray the Soviet research in mind manipulation and its possible use on U.S. or allied individuals, example, POWs or troops. Controlled offensive behavior, however, has other connotations. Certain methods of altering mental or physical states of man may have, ooh, man, this is pre 2020s, huh? You can say things like that. May have application on one's own individuals. The apport technique and astral projection are examples which will be discussed in this report. These two methods allow the enemy to impart certain behavioral characteristics on its own people to the detriment of U.S. or allied personnel or missions. I haven't gotten as far as that in reading this, but when we do, I'd be interested to hear. I mean, is that real? Sounds like bullshit to me. Okay, so section 2 here, current events. So this is in the 1960s, so there's troubles in Northern Ireland between the Catholics and the Protestants, the UK and sort of Catholic, whatever, insurgents. And this isn't the Soviets doing it. I guess this is the UK doing it. So you can see right now that they kind of just conflate all these different countries and what they're doing, and they find interesting tidbits of, mind control, not just in the Soviet Union, but in the UK and presumably in stuff we're doing too. So they're comparing notes. But now they're going to talk about how the British are using psychological warfare type techniques um, on Northern Ireland Catholics. All right, part A, events in Northern Ireland. The following discussion is based on 1971 and 1972 literature dealing with the manipulation of human behavior. The events that have been reported have occurred are not Soviet originated, but provide an excellent example of the type of efforts that this report is expressing. Oh, so I guess you didn't need my commentary. Recently, there has appeared in the press some discussion elaborating on the techniques and procedures for detaining, treating, and interrogating prisoners in Northern Ireland. According to the report, once the detainees are in prison, they come under three types of regime which create in men a state of great confusion, suggestibility, and distress. The first regime contained various methods to produce sensory isolation. The men were made to stand still against a wall with their hands in the air for 4 to 6 hours at a time. The total length was 43 and a half hours. Hoods were placed over the men's heads to further abolish visual input. Sensory input was further decreased by having loud noise generators turned on in order to mask meaningful sounds. The detainees were therefore isolated and from their sensory world. So that sounds very similar to a lot of the photos you might have seen coming out of Abu Ghraib in Iraq back in the day, where you had Iraqi prisoners sort of in weird stress positions with hoods over their heads. So this is obviously the UK and the US comparing notes, and these techniques are still in play. So if these techniques are still being used, I mean, just extrapolate to whatever else they talk about in this document and apply that to what you see around you. The second sensory regime has the effect of increasing confusion and disorientation. Some men were rushed out, hooded and doubled up, past barking dogs, loaded into a helicopter, doors closed, engine revved up, then unloaded, then reloaded, with the procedure repeated 3 times. In another incident, detainees without shoes were made to move quickly over rough ground by military police. And you saw the dog thing also with Abu Ghraib, so just another example. But I think the helicopter is sort of like a mock execution because, at least in like Argentina or something, they would probably, Chile too, they would take, dissidents or communists or whatever up in a helicopter and just dump them out over the ocean. The third type of treatment was the effect of increasing stress and anxiety and reducing resistance to disorienting effect on the two types described above. It appears that dietary intake was restricted to bread and water at 6-hour intervals. Maximum weight loss was achieved, it appears. They really need to work on where they punctuate this. This is not my fault. One detainee lost 8 pounds in 7 days. To accompany the diet restrictions, no sleep was allowed the first 2 or 3 days. 48 hours sleep deprivation in certain individuals has been known to precipitate psychotic-like states. All right, well, if you take out the psychotic-like states, they're giving you weight loss advice. So there's a diet if you need rapid weight loss. Psychological torture and physical abuse has been used on Catholic detainees in Northern Ireland. High frequency sound waves, range not given in report, and sensory deprivation, research methods that have been outlawed for use on humans by the American Psychological Association, were being used to undermine the dignity and destroy the effectiveness of the Catholic minority of Northern Ireland. The case of one 40-year-old released prisoner has been reported. Upon release, the man's mental and physical conditions suggested senility, a condition inconsistent with his health and the time of his internment. The man walks like he is 65, whimpers in the dark, and has an attention span so short he cannot carry on conversations. Um, yeah, that's interesting. But also, outlawed is not really the term I would use for something that the American Psychological Association has declared. So, is it outlawed in the U.S., or did the American Psychological Association just say it's not great, and then the CIA says, "Well, don't care"? Probably the latter. The Northern Ireland procedure can be expected to greatly increase the pliability of detainees under interrogation, since sensory deprivation increases suggestibility and lowers intellectual competence. Stress isolation techniques can reach the extent of eliciting false confessions, where both prisoner and interrogator are convinced the statements rendered are true. It is hoped that the above examples impart to the reader a feeling for the type of mind manipulation procedures that will be discussed later in this report, meaning severe psychological torture. Just setting the stage. Since it appears that the research behind sensory deprivation has been put to current use on humans, the interested reader might peruse Bitterman and Zimmer's 1961 publication entitled The Manipulation of Human Behavior. The book represents a critical examination of some of the conjectures about the application of scientific knowledge to manipulation of human behavior. The problem is explored in a particular frame of reference, the interrogation of an unwilling subject. Attention has been focused on interrogation because the central position this topic has had in public discussions of prisoner of war behavior. Okay, that was a rough read there, but I guess I'll look that up. Bitterman and Zimmer's 1961 paper on the manipulation of human behavior. Should be interesting. But either way, I'll pause here for this video, and then I'll just sort of go into some of the more interesting components of this paper as I read through it. But there's a reason that they're looking at this, that they wrote this whole thing, and it's like 167 pages or something like that. So they did a lot of research on somebody else's research for some reason, which isn't my entertainment. So you have to presume that they're building on it. They're taking what looks promising and they're gonna try it out themselves too. This is like 1972, I guess. So I don't remember when MK Ultra ended, but at least officially, I guess it was still that sort of time frame. It's not like they closed it down. So this is all stuff that we use. You can see it in some of the exact things we're talking about here in Northern Ireland and stuff you've seen the U.S. military use and the CIA use more recently. So the things in this report are hints at the sort of stuff they're probably using against us. All right. Uh, so thanks for listening. I'm going to try to improve the production value of some of this as we go along, but it's been a while. So please share, like, follow, and thanks for watching, listening.